What's going on, guys? Thank you for watching my channel and watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe below for more content like this. Appreciate it. Throughout the entirety of my adult life, there has never been a topic as consistently relevant as quote-unquote mental health. Gen Z, per all accounts, is the mental health generation. Up until we came of age, no one had ever given it really a second thought. We heard about cases of emotional abuse or veterans who came home from war with PTSD, sure. But a suburban mom who fell into bouts of depression, that was nowhere to be found, out of sight and out of mind. But for a myriad of reasons, society has progressed. Many of the problems that used to plague our society have gotten wrung out. We should be thankful every day for this, by the way. More Americans struggle with obesity, for example, than hunger. Although there's a crisis of affordability, particularly for young people, far fewer people live in absolute poverty than before. Modern medicine and technology have completely democratized the vast majority of opportunities for advancements in health, income, and knowledge, among other things. But what happens when this happens, when a society progresses and overcomes the problems that the vast majority of other societies throughout history were not able to progress through and overcome? Well, through psychology, we've discovered that humans have what is called a negativity bias. Negativity bias, simply put, means that humans tend to put far more weight on problems than on solutions. It's why we descend into tribalism online, why we can't drop the politics at the dinner table at Thanksgiving, and why we obsess over things like body image and social status. It's not in our nature to be grateful. We are always striving for the next thing. So in regard to our problems, that natural path for humans to follow when they solve a problem is to, well, look for another problem. There must be some threat on the horizon, our lizard brain tells us. Even though we have all this advancement, this knowledge, this awareness of everything we could be doing to make our lives better, there has to be something more. There has to be a next frontier, a next wave of tribulation to come to incite action within all of us to fix it. Enter mental health. For the longest time, up until very recently, Americans could not afford to think about the state of their thinking. Most of them were barely making ends meet. A good portion of them had dying or sick children. They had to do whatever they could to survive. Mental health, dealing with things like anxiety and depression, words that are beyond commonplace now, were unthinkable to think of back then, and even just probably about 15 years before the time we're recording this show. But they're not now. Now it's seemingly all anyone can think about. We have entire social media sites dedicated to it. Quote-unquote mental health days are part of the new age corporate lingo and lexicon. Terms like, quote, burnout are found everywhere from elementary schools to the highest levels of elected office. We're not just, quote-unquote, talking about mental health and, quote-unquote, breaking the stigma anymore. Quite the opposite. Instead of talking about mental health, we are drowning in mental health. The therapization of culture has been one of the most underrated trends that has shaped America, particularly over the last decade. How has this affected us specifically? In what ways could this possibly negative? Has this actually helped Gen Z, the ones who brought on this revolution? The most curious thing about this is that absolutely none of these questions are even allowed to be asked. Dare to do so, and you're shouted down. But why? Why is mental health ironically such a triggering topic for so many people? How has it become such an obsession? In my view, the biggest reason for this is that many people have adopted their mental health as a closely held part of their identity. And by the way, this isn't entirely wrong, I don't think. Your mind controls everything else about you. You need to identify close with it, to know it, to do your best to understand it. But in typical American fashion, just like we do with everything, we couldn't just leave the issue lie. We had to not just feed it, but gorge it, to make it, for a good many people, the sole thing they define themselves by. Our obsession with ourselves, our collective societal narcissism, has driven us to the point of insanity about our mental health. You can tell this by the broad brushstrokes we paint it. What even is anxiety, quote unquote, or depression, quote unquote, or suicidal thoughts, quote unquote, anymore? No one can say. There's a reason for that. When you get specific about something, you actually have to do something to solve it. And there's the rub. We don't want to solve it, as it turns out. Instead, we want to masturbate to it, to massage it, to caress it, until the comfort of our own coddling bathes us in just enough relaxation to avoid dealing with any actual mental health problems by disguising them in fake mental health problems. And by the way, this isn't just negligence, it's abuse. Hiding your own problems so you don't have to feel uncomfortable enough to solve them is not a kind thing to do to yourself. It allows problems to persist. It causes you to get worse. It sends you further away from your goals that you claim to want to achieve. But it's even worse when you do it to other people. And unfortunately, we as a society have mainstreamed the biggest vehicle of this corrosive and destructive line of thinking that's ever existed: therapy. If any of you have been following me for any amount of time, odds are you know my feelings on therapy. And to put it mildly, I'm the most anti-therapy person I know, and I know a good number of people. For the entirety of my adult life, I've been incredibly hostile towards therapy as both an industry and a practice, which indeed it is both. I've called it anti-family, a cancer, an addiction, a pathology, destructive, harmful, corrosive, disingenuous, and weak. A good number of factors have contributed to this line of thinking. I'm a relatively mentally strong person. At least I like to think I am. I learned that toughness through watching the people in my life go through very hard things. They didn't use therapy as a crutch. They didn't have a subscription to BetterHelp. They felt no need to cry on a couch. The one time I told my parents I felt depressed, my father explicitly told me, quote, "What do you have to be depressed about?" And I thought that was a good point, and still largely do. I had it made by all the base metrics of what, quote unquote, having it made looks like. My parents loved each other. They didn't hit me, beat me, or sexually abuse me. I had no overt evil done to me as a child. I didn't have any disabilities or a lack of meaning or purpose. I had problems. I wasn't a Christian yet. I was addicted to food and porn and had incredibly low self-worth. But depression? I thought that was a bridge too far. But yet through all that white knuckling, all that quote unquote toughing it out, I still had the sense that something was wrong. A healthy person does not turn to substances to cope with them. A healthy person does not need to watch sexual videos on the internet or down thousands upon thousands of calories to just feel like he could get through the day. A healthy person doesn't fear failure so much that he feels like every step he takes is watching under a microscope. A healthy person doesn't have so much social anxiety, particularly around women, that he shrinks whenever a new social opportunity emerges. All of this climaxed, like it did for many, on the onset of the COVID pandemic in March of 2020. That year was going to be my victory lap, the year where I shed my chrysalis of insecurity and self-imposed sanctimony and victimhood to stick it to all of the people I thought had wronged me. I'm a recovering control freak, someone who has carefully architected, curated, and planned every step of his life. Everything that I thought it was in the way was removed. Everything that I thought could help me was added. If I'm ever classified as a sociopath, I would assume that this would be a massive piece of the evidence in the affirmative. But it wasn't meant to be, as it turns out. An unforeseen circumstance, a global pandemic, robbed me of all of it, tossing up all my ambitions to the side like it was nothing. My brain snapped in half like a twig. A wave of panic swept over me. Who was I now? What was I supposed to do? I can't live like this. I'm going to do the unthinkable. I called a therapist, one that lived a block away from my apartment in Columbus, Ohio, and made an appointment. I lasted 6 weeks. That experience with therapy affirmed every thought I wanted to believe about it. My therapist was an old woman who had no idea about anything going on in the world, in my world, or the world of young people. She didn't know what a dating app was. She had no experience in having me open up about internet pornography or my crippling sense of deficiency about literally every part of my life. Every attempt she made to understand fell flat. And by the way, this wasn't her fault, per se. But should she have advertised it as such? I don't think so. I left halfway through my 12 paid sessions. Just gotta work harder, I told myself. And I did. I could do without therapy. I pridefully told myself and others. I'm taking care of my mental health. I read books. When someone talks about feelings, I open up to them. I've forgiven people. I've written the letters. I've had very hard conversations with people. I've told people how I really feel, raw. This attitude is transcended to my friends as well. Every time a man has asked me if they should go to therapy, I've recommended him against it. Always. You'd feel better getting a six-pack than going to therapy, or making more money, or getting a new haircut, than getting told that your parents neglected you and to use that box of tissues should you need to do so. That's what I did, and it's worked out great for me. Am I not enough of a giga-chad for you? Therapy? Psst, why bother? And yet it wasn't enough. Something else is still going on. I've been noticing this for the past couple of months with myself, because more and more I've seen things come up from the basement, as Rocky Balboa put it. I found myself getting shorter with myself and others in instances that I haven't before. I've been hit with raves of brilliantly intense emotions I've never felt anywhere close to before. It's like a slow, soft knock at the base of my brainstem, escalating in frequency and intensity over the last couple of months. And this sense was kicked into overdrive by examples of the specific men in my life opening up about their mental health journeys. My sales coach, for example, who had a horrific upbringing, almost lost his engagement due to him not dealing with his repressed emotions. He's spending thousands of dollars in out-of-pocket medical care costs to take care of it. One of my pastors, who had a childhood very similar to mine, booked his first counseling session 2 weeks ago. More and more people around me are pushing the "I need help with my stuff" button. And given this, I'm finally ready to admit something. I was wrong. I believe my experience with mental health and therapy is turning out to be a massive self-own. Earlier, I talked about how the mental health obsessed crowd, the one who use therapy to get themselves off, drown themselves in self-help books that just tell them to love themselves a little bit more and to take every SSRI their doctor prescribes, are a part of a cult and are doing themselves an immense disservice by staying in its bondage. And by the way, I stand by that statement. They are. However, I believe there's an opposite side to this coin as well, one that I'm guilty of, and I believe many of the anxious, attached, high-agency, insecure overachiever crowd is as well. My dad has told me more times than I could count that I need to quote-unquote live in the gray, and I hate when he says that to me. I've always hated it. I don't like gray. I'm a black and white person. I believe in good and evil, right and wrong, left and right, up and down. In other words, I believe in the truth. I believe in reality. But my dad is an even more black and white person than I am. In fact, he's the person that I, a black and white person, go to for even more black and white person advice. All of that to say, this is a big statement coming from him, because he has had to work on it as well, and perhaps more than I do. Which leads me to the opposite end of the pro-therapy cult, the anti-therapy cult, of which I'm one of the grand wizards. As it turns out, I have done the exact same thing as the pro-therapy side of the equation for years. I've affirmed every single one of my premeditated beliefs without questioning them. I prided myself on being so anti-help in regards to my mental health that I wore it as a badge of honor. I elevated myself without virtue, thinking that I was better than those pussies and wimps that needed to go cry on a couch to feel loved. In other words, I was a hubris-driven, prideful asshole, one that drove his own mental health into the ground just to dump on everyone else's. And this is precisely why I've come to the revelation that, contrary to my own delusion, my mental health is actually not very healthy at all. I probably need therapy more than most other people that I know. It's not that I'm special, because I'm not. It's that I've run the same insane game in my head as all the people I've so heavily criticized, but just in the opposite direction. As my dad said, I need to live in the gray. I need help. And this episode is going to be dedicated to that gray zone of mental health. For too long, people have succumbed to extreme regarding the brain, the most important thing you need to know how to use, including me. And that needs to change for both sides of the coin. We're going to be talking honestly about everyone involved and how both sides can leverage this opportunity to heal properly. This episode is also going to be about action, something that I've been on both right and wrong on when it comes to mental health. It is not okay to take every action when it comes to mental health, to masturbate to all the self-help content, to try out a billion therapists and drown yourself in pills and yoga to avoid reality. But it's also not okay to ignore your mental health, to stay out of the basement, and to take no action at all. The gray is not only a helpful guide, it is also an actionable prescription, something that I have gravely neglected doing. I made a vow to myself 6 years ago, when I started this journey, that I would never throw something out to my audience without having the gall to go through it myself. So given this, here's what I'm planning to do. I'm still not a cry on the couch guy, at least not yet. However, my pastor, who we'll get to later, has talked in depth about being given a 4-day Christian therapeutic intensive retreat by a member of our congregation to help him heal from the things in his basement. He has stated that weekend as one of the most important in his entire life. Over the past month, I've done extensive research into what these look like. They're not cheap, they're not convenient, they're not easy, and all of them scare me way more than I ever thought something like this would. Meaning, it's something I need to do. So on this video, I'm making you all the first to know that I'm setting aside thousands of dollars and a week's worth of work so that next year I can clean out my basement. Do I think this is a magic wand and that it will do all the work for me? No. But is it a massive step in the right direction, particularly for a self-righteous and stubborn guy like me? Yes. The saying, quote-unquote, mental health matters has taken on a life of its own in our era. But your mental health does matter. It defines everything you do, how you interact with your spouse, with your God, with the world, with yourself. If you don't take care of it, it's a subtle sign that you're neglecting taking care of the rest of your orbit, the people in your life that are depending on you to get things done. If you don't want that to happen, if you truly love the people that you're surrounded with, you should do everything you can to take care of them. Get your mind right, and you'll get most other things right along with it. Get your mind wrong, and you'll get most other things wrong along with it. The key, as always, is honesty in either direction.